The office smells like old coffee and yesterday's rain. I've been staring at the same crack in the ceiling for 20 minutes, tracing its jagged path across the water-stained plaster. Tuesday afternoons are when the ghosts come calling, not the supernatural kind, but the lingering specters of old cases, whispers of things I should have seen sooner. The phone rings, slicing through my thoughts like a cold knife. "Marshal Investigations," I answer, voice rough from disuse. My coffee mug has been empty for hours, but I lift it to my lips anyway, a habit older than some of my scars. "Ray, it's James Collins." The name strikes a chord somewhere between nostalgia and wariness. James Collins, my partner back on the force before everything went sideways. Good cop, better father. One of the few who didn't treat me like I was contagious after I left the department. "James, been a while." I straighten in my chair, setting down the empty mug. "Everything all right?" A pause stretches across the line, tense with unspoken worry. "Not exactly. It's about Ava, my daughter." I remember Ava, quiet kid, eyes that see too much. She'd been maybe 8 or 9 when I last saw her, sitting at their kitchen table, drawing with mathematical precision, while the adults talked about things that weren't meant for children's ears. "She's 12 now," James continues, as if reading my thoughts. "And she sees things, Ray, things most people miss." "That's not necessarily a bad thing," I say, but something in his voice tells me this isn't about proud father territory. "She refused to shake her brother's coach's hand yesterday, just flat out wouldn't do it. And when I asked her why later, she said," his voice drops, becoming almost a whisper, "his wrist remembers metal." Those were her exact words. I wait, pen tapping against my notepad. James doesn't call for trivial concerns. He knows the weight of words, the difference between odd and wrong. "There's more," he says. "She drew him. Not just a sketch, but diagrams, like she was mapping something. She kept saying he moves wrong, that his body is hiding something." "Kids say strange things, James?" "Not Ava, not like this." A heavy sigh filters through the receiver. "Look, I know how it sounds, but she's different. The doctors call it Asperger's, but that doesn't quite capture it. She notices patterns, body language, things most people filter out." My gaze drifts to the window, where raindrops chart erratic courses down the glass. "And you want me to what, exactly?" "Just observe. Come to a practice, watch Coach Henderson. Tell me if I'm being paranoid or if there's something to this." I should say no. Child psychology isn't my specialty, and hunches based on a kid's impressions are thin threads to follow. But James Collins saved my life once in a darkened warehouse when we were both wearing badges, and some debts don't expire. "Text me the details. I'll be there." 30 minutes later, I'm pulling into the driveway of a modest suburban home. The Collins residence is neat but lived in. Basketball hoop above the garage, a row of bright flowers struggling against the early fall chill. James meets me at the door, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remember. "Thanks for coming," he says, hand firm on my shoulder. He's aged, hair graying at the temples, but his eyes still carry that steady calm that made him a good cop. "She's in her room. Fair warning, she doesn't do small talk." I follow him through a hallway lined with family photos. James, his son in football gear, and Ava, always slightly apart, never quite looking at the camera. The house smells of recently cooked dinner and laundry detergent. Normal, safe. Ava's room is anything but. The walls are covered in drawings, not the colorful scrawls of a typical child, but precise, annotated sketches. Human figures in various poses, with notes in cramped handwriting marking angles and positions. It's like walking into the workshop of a miniature anatomist. Ava sits cross-legged on the bed, a large sketchbook open before her. She doesn't look up as we enter. Her hands move rapidly across the page, pencil creating sharp, deliberate lines. "Ava, this is Mr. Marshall. Remember him? He used to work with me." "I remember," she says, still not looking up. "You smelled like peppermint gum and gun oil. Now you smell like coffee and old books." She finally raises her head, eyes scanning me with unnerving precision. "Your left shoulder is higher than your right. Compensation for an old injury." James gives me an apologetic look, but I'm more intrigued than offended. "Good eye," I tell her. "Bullet about 15 years ago." She nods once, accepting this as confirmation of her theory. "Dad says you're going to watch Coach Henderson." "That's right. Your dad mentioned you had some concerns about him." Her fingers tighten around the pencil. "Not concerns, observations. He moves wrong." "Wrong how?" "His right wrist has limited range. When someone approaches from behind, his trapezius muscles tense asymmetrically. His gait shows compensation patterns consistent with prior restraint trauma." She delivers these observations in a flat, clinical tone that sends a chill down my spine. I glance at James, who looks both proud and troubled. "Can you show me what you've noticed?" Without a word, Ava flips back several pages in her sketchbook and turns it toward me. The drawing isn't what I expected, not a portrait, but a detailed diagram of a man's posture, with arrows indicating subtle shifts in weight, tensions, angles of limbs. It's unsettlingly precise, like something from a forensic textbook rather than a child's drawing. "These are all signs," she says, voice still steady. "His body remembers something his face tries to hide." My hands are cold, but I feel a warmth in my chest, an uncomfortable heat that I recognize as the first stirrings of genuine concern. I've learned to trust instincts, both my own and those of people who see the world differently than most. "I'll take a look tomorrow," I tell her, keeping my voice neutral. "Just an observation, nothing more." She studies my face, searching for something, sincerity, perhaps, or deception. "Good," she says finally, returning to her drawing. "Watch how he flinches when whistles blow. Watch his eyes when he thinks no one is looking." Later, standing on the porch with James, I struggle to articulate what I'm feeling. "She's remarkable," I say finally. James nods, looking out at the darkening street. "And terrifying sometimes. But she's never wrong about people, Ray. That's what scares me." "I'll be at practice tomorrow." 3 o'clock, right?" "Yeah, just be careful. If there is something wrong with Henderson, I don't want him knowing we're looking." I nod, turning up my collar against the evening chill. Discretion is my middle name. "I thought it was trouble," James says, with a hint of our old camaraderie. "That's my confirmation name," I reply, and his laugh follows me to my car. As I drive away, Ava's drawings linger in my mind, not just the precision, but the certainty behind them. His wrist remembers metal. What exactly does a body remember that the mind tries to forget? Tomorrow, I'll start finding out. The bleachers are cold metal against my back as I settle in, just another middle-aged guy with nothing better to do than watch teenage boys run drills on a gray afternoon. I've positioned myself halfway up, not so close as to draw attention, not so far that I miss the details. A battered notebook rests on my knee, a prop more than a tool. Old habits. No one questions a man taking notes if he looks like he belongs. The practice field is a patchwork of worn grass and mud, bordered by a chain-link fence, tagged with school colors. Players move through their formations with varying degrees of coordination, some fluid, others still fighting against their own growing limbs. Parents dot the bleachers, mostly mothers with travel mugs and distant expressions, a few fathers pretending not to care too much. I spot Ava immediately. She sits alone at the bottom row, her slight frame nearly swallowed by an oversized gray hoodie. Unlike everyone else whose attention follows the ball, her focus remains fixed on a single point: Coach Henderson. Henderson stands at the edge of the field, whistle hanging from his neck, clipboard in hand. Early 40s, athletic build maintained despite no longer being in his prime. He calls out instructions, voice carrying across the field with practiced authority. Nothing immediately strikes me as off, which is both reassuring and disappointing. "Defense, tighten up. Martinez, watch your blind side." Henderson moves across the sideline with the confident stride of a man accustomed to being obeyed. When a player misses a tackle, he blows the whistle, sharp, commanding, and demonstrates the correct form. His movements are fluid, professional. I glance back at Ava. Her pencil moves across her sketchbook in quick, precise strokes. She doesn't look up, doesn't seem to register the cheers when someone makes a good play or the groans following a fumble. She's tracking something else entirely. After about 20 minutes, I make my way down to her row, approaching casually as if I've just noticed her. "Mind if I sit?" I ask, gesturing to the empty space beside her. She doesn't look up. "You're already committed to the action of sitting. The question is superfluous." I lower myself beside her, leaving enough space to respect her boundaries. "Watching your brother practice?" "No." The pencil doesn't pause. "Documenting behavioral patterns?" I lean back, keeping my posture open, non-threatening. "Find anything interesting?" Now she stops, finally turning to look at me. Her eyes are dark, serious pools that seem to absorb rather than reflect light. Her hair is pulled back in a messy ponytail, strands escaping to frame a face too solemn for its years. "You didn't notice anything," she says. It's not a question. "Not yet," I admit, "but I've only been watching for 20 minutes. She studies me, head tilted slightly as if recalibrating. "Most people never notice. Their brains filter out the inconsistencies to maintain their preferred narrative." "Show me what you see," I say. Ava flips back a few pages in her sketchbook. The drawing isn't what most would expect from a 12-year-old girl. It's a series of diagrams, the human form broken down into mechanical components, annotated with observations. Coach Henderson in various positions, standing, demonstrating a tackle, speaking to a player. His right side compensates for the left when he demonstrates blocking techniques, she says, pointing to one diagram. The range of motion in his left shoulder is restricted by approximately 12 degrees compared to normative movement patterns. I look from the drawing to Henderson, who is currently showing a player how to position for a tackle. Now that she's pointed it out, I can see the slight asymmetry in his stance. "Could be an old sports injury," I suggest. "Possible, but inconsistent with the distribution of compensatory movements." She flips to another page. "Note the involuntary flinch response when approached from behind. Classic hypervigilance pattern." As if on cue, an assistant coach approaches Henderson from behind with a question. Henderson turns sharply, his shoulders tensing momentarily before recognition settles in. It's subtle. Most wouldn't register it as anything but a man startled from concentration. "Lots of people don't like being surprised," I say, playing devil's advocate, even as my instincts begin to align with hers. Ava's face remains impassive, but her fingers tighten around the pencil. There's a difference between startle and trauma response. His body anticipates harm specifically from behind and above, and here... She flips to yet another page, this one showing close-ups of Henderson's wrists and forearms. The way he rotates his right wrist when demonstrating passing drills. There's a habitual limit, a boundary his body remembers. I watch Henderson more carefully now, filtering out the noise and activity of practice to focus solely on his movements. There it is, a barely perceptible hitch when he rotates his wrist past a certain point, an instinctive adjustment so subtle most would never catch it. He's compensating, Ava continues, voice flat but intense. Old restraints. Something was tied there. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. A chill runs through me that has nothing to do with the autumn air. Her assessment is delivered with such clinical detachment that it takes a moment for the implications to sink in. If she's right, if Henderson's body shows signs of having been restrained, what does that mean? Victim or perpetrator? And either way, why is he coaching teenage boys? You think someone hurt him? I ask carefully. Someone changed him, she corrects, turning back to her current drawing. The question is whether he's now passing that change to others. On the field, Henderson is demonstrating proper form to a freshman, hands positioning the boy's shoulders, voice encouraging but firm. Nothing inappropriate, nothing that would raise flags for the parents watching. But now I'm seeing through Ava's lens, the slight distance he maintains, the way his eyes occasionally scan the perimeter of the field as if checking exits, the controlled precision of every movement. Has he ever done anything inappropriate? I ask, keeping my voice casual. Defining inappropriate is subjective, she replies. Has he touched anyone inappropriately? No. Has he violated standard coaching protocols? No. She pauses, pencil hovering above paper. But he watches certain players differently. His pupils dilate. His breathing pattern changes. And sometimes, when he thinks no one is looking, he checks his phone and his entire affect shifts. The whistle blows, signaling the end of a drill. Henderson gathers the team, speaking animatedly, a perfect picture of dedicated coach. But now I can't unsee the subtle markers Ava has identified, the way his smile never quite reaches his eyes, the fractional delay in his reactions to certain stimuli. I need to see more, I tell her. Keep an eye on him, but don't make it obvious you're watching. Ava's lips twitch in what might be her version of amusement. I'm always watching, Mr. Marshall. Most people just assume I'm not paying attention because I don't make eye contact. She returns to her drawing, adding a notation beside a diagram of Henderson's neck muscles. He's going to be alone in the parking lot after practice. He always stays late on Tuesdays. I nod, feeling that familiar prickle at the back of my neck, the one that's kept me alive through decades of ugly cases and uglier truths. I'll be there. Ava doesn't respond, already absorbed back into her work. But as I rise to leave, her quiet voice follows me. Be careful. People who've been broken sometimes break others to feel whole again. I glance back at her, this strange, perceptive child with her 2 old eyes and precise hands. She doesn't look up, but I know she's registered my pause, catalogued my reaction, added it to her mental database of human behaviors. I'll keep that in mind, I tell her, and head toward the parking lot, where answers, and possibly more questions, await. The parking lot empties slowly, a trickle of cars and tired teenagers with duffel bags slung over shoulders. I lean against my car, phone in hand like I'm waiting for an important call, just another parent killing time. The autumn air carries the mingled scents of sweat, grass, and exhaust fumes. I watch the locker room door through lowered eyes, mind cycling through Ava's observations like a detective flipping through mugshots, searching for the face that matches the crime. I'm still not convinced. 20 years on the force and another decade as a PI have taught me that people are complicated puzzles. A wince, a flinch, a hesitation. These could mean 1,000 different things. Old sports injuries, military service, a car accident. Henderson's body language is unusual, sure, but I've seen stranger tics in innocent men. And yet, there was something in Ava's clinical certainty that won't let me dismiss her. Not the desperate need for attention that drives some kids to invent problems, but the opposite, a detached, almost reluctant recognition of patterns that disturb her ordered view of the world. The locker room door swings open. Henderson emerges, gym bag over one shoulder, keys jingling in his hand. Alone now, his posture has shifted, shoulders slightly lower, stride less purposeful. He looks tired, normal, human. I push off from my car and make my approach, timing it so we meet halfway across the lot. Nothing threatening, just two men crossing paths. "Coach Henderson?" I call, keeping my tone casual, friendly. He turns, and there it is. That momentary tension Ava noted, the fractional delay before his public face clicks back into place. A practiced smile appears, not quite reaching his eyes. "That's me. Can I help you?" "Ray Marshall." I extend my hand. "James Collins's friend. My godson plays for you. Ethan Collins." Recognition flickers across his features as we shake hands. His grip is firm, professionally calibrated. "Right, Ethan. Good kid. Works hard. You caught the practice today?" I nod, shoving my hands into my pockets. "First time seeing him play since last season. He's improved." "He has." Henderson shifts his weight, adjusting his grip on his gym bag. The movement pulls his sleeve up slightly, revealing a thin white line circling his wrist. Old scar tissue, barely visible against his tan skin. "We're working on his lateral movement, but his hands are solid." We talk football for a few minutes, safe territory, neutral ground. I watch him as we speak, cataloging the details. The way he keeps his back to the building, never the open parking lot. The unconscious way his right hand occasionally touches his left wrist. The constant awareness of space. He maintains a precise distance between us, adjusting when I shift my weight. "You coach long?" I ask, steering the conversation toward him. "About 15 years, different schools." His answer comes quickly, rehearsed. "Took a couple years off to travel, came back to it. Nothing better than shaping young men, you know." "Travel where?" The question is innocent enough, but something flickers behind his eyes. A momentary calculation. "South America, mostly. Some Asia." He glances at his watch. "Listen, I need to get going. Got a stack of game tapes to review tonight." "Of course, don't let me keep you." I step back, giving him space. "Good talking with you." He nods, already turning away. "Tell James I said hello, and tell Ethan to keep working on those lateral drills." I watch him walk to his car, a modest sedan, nothing flashy. His gait is smooth but measured, each step deliberate. As he unlocks his car, he scans the parking lot once more, a quick sweep that most wouldn't notice. Not looking for someone, but making sure no one is watching him. Our brief handshake replays in my mind. His palm was calloused in unusual places, not the uniform roughness of someone who works out regularly, but specific patterns, concentrated on the outer edge of his hand. The kind of calluses formed from repeated pressure against hard surfaces, or from breaking falls, or from fighting. His car pulls out of the lot, and I'm left with more questions than answers. Nothing I've seen proves anything sinister. A cautious man with old scars and a vigilant nature could be explained a dozen innocent ways, and yet the details nag at me, tiny burrs catching on the fabric of my thoughts. "He flinched when you approached from behind." The voice startles me. I turn to find Ava standing a few feet away, her oversized hoodie making her seem even smaller than she is. Her sketchbook is clutched against her chest like a shield. Jesus, kid, don't sneak up on people like that. I exhale slowly, recalibrating, and I approached from the front. Not you, when the assistant coach came up behind him during practice. Trained response. She takes a step closer, her eyes fixed somewhere around my shoulder. Did you see his wrists? I saw a scar, I admit. Could be anything. Not a singular scar. Bilateral circumferential scarring, consistent with prolonged restraint. The clinical precision of her words contrasts sharply with her age, creating a dissonance that's hard to reconcile. And his hands have abnormal callous patterns. I stare at her, unsettled by how closely her observations match my own. You noticed all that from the bleachers? She shrugs, a stiff, mechanical gesture. I notice everything. Most people filter. I don't have that filter. Ava, I say carefully, even if you're right about the physical signs, it doesn't necessarily mean anything criminal. People have complicated pasts. I know. For the first time, emotion creeps into her voice. Frustration, perhaps, at my continued skepticism. But his past is still active. He received a text message during practice. His pupils dilated, respiration increased, micro-tremors in his hands. Then he made a call in the locker room. 17 minutes ago. I frown. How do you know about a call in the locker room? Sound carries through the ventilation system to the equipment closet. She says this as if it's the most natural thing in the world to know. He said, "It's handled. No one knows." A chill runs through me that has nothing to do with the evening air. You were eavesdropping? I was retrieving my brother's forgotten inhaler, she corrects. The auditory information was incidental. I look toward the now empty spot where Henderson's car was parked, mind racing through possibilities. Could be nothing, a personal matter, a gambling debt, an affair. Or it could be something worse. The scar tissue on his wrists suggests he was once a victim. But victims sometimes become perpetrators, the cycle of harm spinning forward like a terrible inheritance. I'll look into him, I tell her, decision made. Discreetly, background check, history, the gap in his employment, but Ava... I wait until she meets my eyes, just for a second. Don't follow him. Don't put yourself in his line of sight more than necessary. She nods once, a sharp, definitive motion. I won't need to. You see it now, too. It's not a question, but a statement of fact. His body is screaming secrets. You just had to know how to listen. As we walk back toward the school building where James will pick her up, I find myself wondering what other secrets this odd, perceptive child has unlocked with her unfiltered gaze, and what darker truths might be hiding behind Coach Henderson's carefully constructed normalcy. One more thing, Ava says as we reach the pickup area. The calluses on his hands, they're consistent with climbing, or with pulling someone who's resisting. Our eyes meet briefly, and I see something there that sends another chill through me. Not fear, but a terrible certainty. For all her clinical detachment, Ava understands exactly what she's seeing. And now, so do I. Something is very wrong with Coach Henderson, and whatever secrets his body is screaming, I'm now determined to hear them. My home office is a shrine to other people's nightmares. File cabinets stuffed with tragedies, bookshelves lined with criminal methodology texts, and a corkboard that's hosted more missing persons than a busy train station. Tonight, Coach Henderson joins the congregation. I tap his name into my computer, the blue light casting shadows across my face as midnight creeps toward morning. The first layer of information is benign, expected. Michael Henderson, 42, bachelor's degree in physical education from State University, certification in sports medicine. Employment record shows 3 high schools in 15 years. Solid recommendations. No criminal record. No civil suits. Not even a parking ticket in the last decade. On paper, he's exactly what he appears to be. A dedicated coach with a clean record. Too clean, maybe. I dig deeper, cross-referencing dates, following the breadcrumb trail of his professional life. And there it is, a gap. Between St. Mary's High School and his current position, a 2-year hole. He mentioned traveling, but people who travel leave traces. Credit card receipts, passport stamps, social media posts. Normal people don't vanish completely. My fingers hover over the keyboard. It's nearly 2 a.m., but sleep feels like a distant country I'm no longer eligible to visit. There's something about this case, about Ava's certainty, that burrows under my skin, an itch I can't quite reach. I print what I have and shut down the computer. The county archives open at 9. Some answers can't be found in the digital world. Morning arrives like a hangover, though the only poison in my system is yesterday's coffee and too little sleep. I shower, dress in what I think of as my official business costume, sport coat over a button-down that's just formal enough to suggest authority without screaming "cop," and head downtown. The county archives occupy the basement of a government building that seems to sweat bureaucracy from its pores. The air is cool and dry, preserved like the documents it houses. A woman with steel-gray hair and reading glasses that match her cardigan looks up as I approach her desk. "Can I help you?" Her voice is surprisingly warm, at odds with the sterile environment. I flash my PI license and my most disarming smile. "Ray Marshall. I'm doing some background research on a local resident. Employment verification, nothing exciting. Records request forms are over there." She gestures to a stack of papers. "Section you need? Employment, education, property records for the last, 10 years or so." She raises an eyebrow but doesn't comment. I've found that most people who work in archives have seen enough strange requests that very little surprises them anymore. 20 minutes later, I'm settled at a corner table with several folders. Henderson's paper trail is as neat as his digital one, until it isn't. Employment at St. Mary's ends abruptly in June, 5 years ago. His current position begins 2 years later in August. Between them, nothing. No unemployment filings, no tax records, no property leases or purchases, no travel visas or passport activity. For 2 years, Michael Henderson effectively ceased to exist. I lean back, letting the chair creak beneath me. People don't vanish without reason. Witness protection, incarceration, deep cover, or something outside the system entirely. "Find what you were looking for?" The archivist appears beside me, breaking my concentration. "Actually, I'm finding what isn't there," I admit. "You ever seen this before? Someone completely dropping off the record for years at a time?" She considers this, head tilted slightly. "Occasionally? Usually means sealed records, foreign residency without proper documentation, or someone who wanted to disappear." She lowers her voice. "Or someone who did disappear, but not by choice." The implication hangs between us. "Thanks," I tell her. "That's helpful." She gives me a look that says she knows I'm not telling her everything. "Whatever you're hunting, Mr. Marshall, be careful. Gaps in records usually mean someone worked very hard to create them." I gather my notes, leaving the files for her to refile. Outside, the morning sun has burned away the lingering mist, but I feel a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature. Henderson's history has a hole in it large enough to hide any number of secrets. My phone buzzes. James Collins. "Ray, Ava wants to talk to you, says it's important." 30 minutes later, I'm sitting across from Ava at a quiet corner table in a coffee shop near her school. She's hunched over her sketchbook, pencil moving in quick, precise strokes. Her father waits at the counter, giving us space but keeping her in sight. "You found the gap," she says without looking up. It's not a question. "How did you know I was looking into his background?" "Probability. It's what investigators do." She flips to a new page in her sketchbook, turning it to face me. "Look." The page contains 2 detailed sketches, Henderson and the younger assistant coach I'd seen at practice. Carlos, I think his name was. The drawings focus on their posture, with annotations highlighting specific muscle groups and movement patterns. "They flinch the same way," Ava says, voice flat but intent. "When approached from behind, when a whistle blows unexpectedly. Identical neuromuscular response patterns." I study the drawings. Even with my untrained eye, I can see the similarities she's mapped. The same tension in the shoulders, the same protective angle of the neck. "Could be coincidence," I suggest, but my voice lacks conviction. "Maybe they have similar training." "Not training, conditioning." She taps the paper. "These are trauma responses. The body remembers what happens to it, creates automatic protection patterns. They were conditioned the same way." I feel my stomach tighten. "You're saying someone hurt them both? The same person? Or the same system?" She closes her sketchbook, finally meeting my eyes for a flickering moment. "Carlos isn't much older than the seniors, 22, maybe 23, and he watches Henderson like he's waiting for instructions, not just coaching instructions, like he needs permission to exist." My mind races through the implications. A coach with unexplained scars and a 2-year disappearance. A young assistant who mirrors his trauma responses, both working with vulnerable teenage boys. "Ava," I say carefully, "have you noticed any of the players showing similar patterns?" She shakes her head. "Not yet, but there's a new girl at school. Her movement signatures match theirs, not as pronounced, but developing." James returns with drinks, setting a hot chocolate in front of Ava. "Everything okay?" I meet his eyes over his daughter's head. "We need to talk. Later." He nods, understanding passing between us. "Whatever Henderson's secrets are, they're bigger than we thought, and possibly more dangerous." Ava doesn't touch her drink, still focused on her sketchbook. "They're connected," she murmurs. "Coach, Carlos, the new girl. Something happened to them, and it's still happening." My hands are cold around my coffee cup, but I feel a warmth in my chest, an uncomfortable heat that I recognize as the first stages of genuine alarm. 2 missing years, 3 people with matching trauma responses, and a whispered phone call. It's handled. No one knows. No one except us. Schools have a particular smell. Floor wax, adolescent anxiety, and institutional food creating a cocktail that's identical across decades and state lines. Willowbrook Middle School is no different. I trail behind the vice principal, a woman whose pantsuit seems to crackle with static electricity as she leads me through hallways decorated with inspirational posters and student artwork. My visitor's badge feels like a police target on my chest, but I'm here legitimately. James arranged it, calling in a favor with administration to allow me to observe their security protocols as a consultant. "We're very proud of our safety measures, Mr. Marshall," the vice principal, Ms. Harmon, according to the nameplate on her office door, says over her shoulder. "Card readers at all exterior doors, cameras in common areas, regular drills." "Very impressive," I murmur, eyes scanning the flood of students as the bell rings, signaling period change. Bodies in motion, a river of backpacks and hormones and noise. "Do you mind if I observe the student flow patterns? Helps identify vulnerable transition points." She seems pleased by the technical jargon. "Of course." I have a meeting, but feel free to walk the halls. Just keep that visitor badge visible. Perfect. I nod my thanks and position myself against a wall, becoming part of the architecture as students stream past. I'm looking for Ava, who should be changing classes now. I spot her moving against the current, her small frame weaving through the crowd with practiced precision. She doesn't bump into anyone, maintaining a bubble of space that nobody seems to notice or penetrate. When she reaches me, she doesn't acknowledge my presence directly, just stands beside me, eyes fixed on her sketchbook. "Third locker bank," she says without preamble. "Blue sweater. Watch her hands." I scan the hallway and find the girl Ava must mean. Sophia, I assume, the new student she mentioned. 15 or 16, slight build, dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. She wears a blue cardigan that hangs loosely on her frame, sleeves pulled down over her wrists, despite the warm building. Her movements as she works her locker combination are precise, almost robotic. "What am I looking for?" I ask, keeping my voice low. "Don't look for, just see." Ava's pencil moves across her page, capturing something I'm still missing. I watch Sophia more carefully. She keeps her back to the lockers, eyes making regular sweeps of the hallway, not the casual glances of a teenager looking for friends, but methodical scans of the environment. When a group of boys passes too close, her shoulders hunch slightly, hands withdrawing into her sleeves. The movement is subtle, almost imperceptible in the chaos of the hallway. She's protecting her wrists, I realize aloud. Ava nods once, sharply. "Good. Now watch her neck posture when a teacher approaches." As if on cue, a male teacher walks past, calling out to some students about homework. Sophia's chin dips, her gaze dropping to the floor. Not the typical teenage avoidance of authority, but something more, a submission response, minimizing her presence. "Let's follow," Ava says, already moving. "Not too close." I fall in behind her, feeling distinctly out of place among the teenagers. We maintain a discreet distance as Sophia walks to her next class, noting how she hugs the wall, how she flinches slightly when announcements crackle over the PA system, how she waits for others to enter the classroom before her, unwilling to turn, her back on the hallway. "She moves like prey," I murmur. Ava stops suddenly, turning to face me. Her eyes meet mine directly, a rare occurrence that emphasizes the importance of what she's about to say. "Not prey, property." She flips open her sketchbook, showing me a series of drawings. These are the baseline movement patterns I documented over the past 3 days. The pages contain detailed sketches of Sophia from various angles, with annotations marking posture, gait, and minute shifts in weight distribution. Even to my untrained eye, the technical precision is remarkable. "Compare to these," Ava continues, flipping to her earlier drawings of Henderson and Carlos. She places the pages side by side, and the similarities jump out at me. The same protective curl of the shoulders, the same vigilant scanning patterns, the same way of holding the wrists to minimize exposure. "It's like they were programmed by the same person," I say. "Not programmed, conditioned." Ava's voice remains flat, but I detect an undercurrent of urgency. Classical conditioning requires consistent application of stimulus and response. The body adapts to minimize pain or maximize reward. "You're saying they were tortured?" The word feels harsh in the school hallway, incongruous against the backdrop of locker slams and teenage chatter. "Systematically altered." Ava flips to a new page, this one showing a human figure with certain areas highlighted. "Key pressure points for compliance training: wrists, neck, lower back, areas where pain can be applied without visible bruising." My stomach turns. I've seen torture victims before, during my time on the force, but this is different. Not the brutal, obvious damage of traditional torture, but something more insidious. Behavioral modification. The creation of automatic responses so deeply ingrained they become part of a person's physical vocabulary. Sophia transferred 2 weeks ago, Ava continues. Her file says she was homeschooled before. But look at these. She shows me another series of sketches dated over the past week. The changes are subtle but unmistakable. Increasing submission cues, more pronounced flinching responses, decreased eye contact. She's getting worse, I observe. The conditioning is being reinforced. Ava watches as Sophia disappears into a classroom. Something or someone is continuing the process. The bell rings, signaling the start of class. The hallway empties quickly, leaving us alone with the echo of slamming doors and Ava's disturbing observations. Ava, how did you know to watch for these patterns? I ask, suddenly realizing how specific her knowledge seems. I read extensively on trauma responses and behavioral conditioning after I noticed Henderson's patterns. Neurodevelopmental psychology journals, victim recovery studies, papers on cult deprogramming. She says this as casually as a typical 12-year-old might mention reading a comic book. I needed context for what I was seeing. I shake my head, both impressed and disturbed. And you're certain about this? That Henderson, Carlos, and now this girl all show the same signs? Yes. She closes her sketchbook decisively. They all have the same somatic signature. Minor variations based on physical build and duration of conditioning, but the core patterns match. How would Henderson and Sophia even connect? He teaches high school, she's in middle school? Ava looks at me like I've missed something obvious. Sports camps, community programs. Henderson runs weekend clinics that serve multiple schools. She pauses. Sophia joined the volleyball program last week. Henderson's assistant, Carlos, helps coach it. The pieces slide into place with an almost audible click. A coach with a mysterious 2-year absence. A young assistant who shows the same trauma patterns. A new student gradually exhibiting identical behaviors, all connected through sports programs that give them access to kids across multiple schools. Ava tugs my sleeve, pulling me toward a side hallway as a teacher emerges from a classroom. We duck around the corner, and she leans close, her voice barely above a whisper. She's one of them too, but newer. The patterns aren't fully fixed yet. One of them, I repeat. You think there are more? Probability suggests yes. Her eyes flick toward the main hallway. The conditioning model appears systematic. Acquisition, reinforcement, application. Henderson was acquired. Carlos was his first successful conversion. Now they're processing Sophia. The clinical language makes it somehow more horrifying, the reduction of human suffering to a production line. I think of the scar tissue on Henderson's wrists, the gap in his history, his careful monitoring of his surroundings. Whatever happened to him during those missing years transformed him from victim to perpetrator. We need to find out where he went during those 2 years, I say. Ava nods. And we need to watch the training sessions. That's where it's happening. The reinforcement. As we walk toward the front office, my security consultation complete, I realize I'm seeing the school differently now. The patterns Ava described are suddenly visible to me. The way certain students hold themselves, the flinching, the vigilance. Most are normal teenage awkwardness, but now I'm attuned to the difference between ordinary discomfort and conditioned response. I see them now, I tell her as we reach the main entrance. The patterns. You've taught me to see them. She looks up at me, expression serious. Good, because I think Coach Henderson has noticed me watching, and I don't think he likes it. The call comes at 4:17 p.m., James's voice tight with the kind of controlled panic that parents specialize in. Ray Henderson called Ava directly, offered a private session to work on her observation skills for a science project. My blood turns to slush in my veins. Where? I'm already grabbing my keys, the metal biting into my palm. The practice field. She said yes before I could stop her. I'm stuck in traffic 20 minutes out at least. I'm in my car before he finishes the sentence, tires spitting gravel as I peel out of my driveway. The school grounds are nearly deserted at this hour. Practice over, buses gone, the building exhaling the day's chaos into the afternoon quiet. I park haphazardly, leaving my car at an angle that would earn a ticket on a normal day. Nothing about today is normal. I scan the athletic fields spread behind the school, squinting against the low autumn sun. The football field is empty, as is the baseball diamond. Then I spot them. Two figures on the far soccer field, adult and child, separated by what suddenly seems like an insufficient distance. I move quickly but deliberately across the grounds, staying close to the tree line that borders the eastern edge. No running, no shouting, nothing to alert Henderson that his carefully arranged scenario is about to be interrupted. My hand keeps drifting to where my service weapon used to sit, a phantom limb sensation from my cop days. I haven't carried in years, but right now, the absence feels significant. The soccer field is cut into a small depression, ringed by trees on 3 sides, and bordered by the parking lot on the 4th. Isolated, private, selected with care. Henderson stands in the center, clipboard in hand, gesturing as he speaks to Ava. She stands a few yards away, her posture rigid, sketchbook clutched to her chest like armor. From this distance, the scene could be innocent. A coach offering extra help, a student receiving guidance. But I see it now through Ava's lens, the details that don't fit. Henderson's position places Ava with her back to the trees, facing the sun. His stance blocks her most direct path back to the school building. His car, I notice, is parked at the edge of the lot closest to this field, driver's door left slightly ajar. I circle to approach from Henderson's blind side, keeping low where the ground dips. Close enough now to hear their conversation. "Remarkable eye for detail, Ava," Henderson is saying, his voice pitched to be warm, encouraging. Teacher voice. "The way you observe movement is really quite special. I think you could help with a research project I'm working on, sports medicine, injury prevention." Ava doesn't respond. Her eyes aren't on Henderson, but on something just past him. His car, I realize. She's already put it together. "Smart kid. Why don't we grab your backpack from my office and I can show you some of the materials?" Henderson takes a step toward her, smooth and casual. Nothing threatening in the movement itself, but the intention behind it makes my skin crawl. "I didn't bring a backpack," Ava says, her voice flat. "I don't need materials." Henderson smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. "Well, I have everything in my car then, just some journals, research papers, things I think would interest you." He takes another step. Ava doesn't back away, but I see her weight shift slightly, preparing. Her gaze flicks across the field, calculating escape routes, assessing options. She may understand patterns, but she's still 12, still small, still vulnerable. "It'll just take a few minutes," Henderson continues, his voice dropping, becoming more intimate. "I think someone with your special way of seeing things could really benefit from what I have to show you." The shift happens so subtly, I almost miss it. Henderson's body language transforms, his shoulders squaring, his stance widening slightly, his movements becoming more deliberate. It's like watching someone switch masks, the affable coach persona slipping to reveal something colder, more calculating beneath. Ava sees it too. She takes a half step back, then freezes, suddenly uncertain. For the first time since I've met her, she looks her age. A child confronted with something her remarkable mind can identify but not fully process. "Actually, I need to go home now," she says, her voice smaller than I've ever heard it. Henderson's hand shoots out, not quite grabbing her but entering her space, an invasion disguised as a friendly gesture. "It won't take long, Ava. I promise you'll find it fascinating." I'm moving before I fully form the plan, emerging from my concealment with deliberate noise. "Ava, there you are." Both heads turn toward me. Relief flashes across Ava's face, there and gone in an instant. Henderson's expression shifts more slowly. Surprise, irritation, and then a smooth recalibration back to his coach persona. "Mr. Marshall, right?" He straightens, hand dropping back to his side. "James's friend. I was just offering Ava some research materials for a project." "James asked me to pick her up," I say, voice casual but firm as I reach Ava's side. "He's stuck in traffic." I didn't realize Ava had other arrangements. Henderson's smile remains fixed, but his eyes have gone flat, calculating. "We were just wrapping up anyway." Ava moves to stand slightly behind me, not touching, but close enough that I can feel the tremor running through her small frame. Her voice, when she speaks, is barely audible. "He was going to take me." Henderson's expression doesn't change, but a muscle twitches in his jaw. "Just showing you some materials in my car, Ava. Nothing improper about a teacher helping a student." "Except you're not her teacher," I point out. "You don't even work at this school." "I coordinate with all the schools in the district for our development programs." His posture shifts subtly, weight centered, hands loose at his sides. Ready. I recognize the stance from my years on the force. This man has training. "Well, we won't keep you," I say, placing a gentle hand on Ava's shoulder to guide her toward the parking lot, toward the school, away from his waiting car. "I'm sure you've got game tapes to review." Henderson doesn't move, but his eyes follow us, that calculating look never wavering. "Ava has a real gift for observation," he calls after us. "Be a shame not to develop it properly." The threat isn't in the words themselves, but in the tone, the proprietary interest, the implied continuation. "This isn't over," that tone says. "This is merely postponed." I keep my pace measured until we're out of his sight line, then hurry Ava toward my car. She moves stiffly, her usual fluid precision replaced by something almost mechanical. "Are you okay?" I ask as we reach my vehicle. She nods once, sharply, but doesn't speak. Her knuckles are white around her sketchbook. "He was going to take you," I say, not a question but a confirmation of what we both know. "Yes." Her voice is flat, but her hands shake. "His pupils dilated 40% when I mentioned going home." Micro-expressions indicated determination and adjustment of strategy. She stops, swallows hard. "He positioned himself between me and all viable escape routes. Classic predator corralling behavior." I unlock the car, holding the door for her. "Did he touch you at all before I arrived?" "No, but he would have." She slides into the passenger seat, sketchbook clutched to her chest. "He was establishing trust first, grooming behavior." I recognized the pattern, but couldn't. She breaks off again, frustration creasing her brow. "My body wouldn't respond correctly. Cognitive recognition didn't trigger appropriate motor response." "You froze," I translate gently. "It happens, Ava, even to trained adults. It's a normal response to threat." She looks at me directly for the first time, eyes wide and troubled. "He's done this before, successfully." It's not a question. Through the windshield, I see Henderson walking to his car, movement smooth and unhurried. Nothing in his demeanor suggests a man who just attempted to abduct a child. He glances our way once, expression unreadable at this distance, then gets into his vehicle and drives away. "I think you're right," I tell her as I start the engine. "And I think he's not working alone." "Carlos was watching from the equipment shed," Ava says matter-of-factly. "I saw him when Coach first approached me. He was tracking our movements, maintaining sight lines." My hands tighten on the steering wheel. "You saw all that and still stayed?" "I needed evidence." She looks down at her sketchbook. "I needed to document his methodology to establish pattern and intent." A chill runs through me that has nothing to do with the car's air conditioning. This strange, brilliant child was willing to put herself in danger to gather evidence, to prove what she knew was happening. "Ava," I say carefully, "that was incredibly brave and incredibly dangerous. Promise me you won't do anything like that again." She doesn't answer immediately, staring out the window as we pull away from the school. "He was going to take me to the same place he takes the others," she says finally. "I could have found them." "And become one of them," I counter. "Or worse." We drive in silence for several blocks, the weight of what almost happened settling between us. Finally, Ava speaks again, her voice small but steady. "There are more. Not just Sophia, others who've been through the full process. I've identified movement patterns in at least 3 other students across different schools." My mouth goes dry. "You think Henderson is building some kind of network?" "Not building, maintaining." She opens her sketchbook, revealing a diagram I haven't seen before, a flow chart connecting names, behaviors, locations. "He's a handler. Carlos is his assistant handler. They identify potential targets, condition them, then deploy them to identify more targets. The implications turn my blood to ice. Not an isolated predator, but a system. Not opportunistic abuse, but methodical recruitment." The 2-year gap in Henderson's history takes on a darker significance, not just a period of victimization, but of conversion, transformation from victim to perpetrator. "We need to talk to your father," I tell her as we pull into her driveway, "and then we need to go to the police." Ava shakes her head. "They won't believe us. Not yet. We need more evidence." She's right, and we both know it. A coach with suspicious behavior, a child who sees patterns others don't, and a theory about systematic conditioning. It's not enough for authorities to act on. But it's enough to make Henderson dangerous, to make him desperate. As we walk to her front door, Ava turns to me, her face serious in the fading afternoon light. "He'll try again," she says. "Not with me now, but someone else." "I know." I rest my hand briefly on her shoulder. "But this time, we'll be ready." Inside, James waits, concern etched into every line of his face. And as Ava begins to explain what happened, I feel the case shifting beneath my feet, expanding from a puzzling observation about a coach's odd behavior into something much darker, much larger than I first imagined. This isn't just about Henderson anymore. It's about whatever, or whoever, created him, and how many others they've created since. James's kitchen smells of burnt coffee and fear. The overhead light casts harsh shadows across the scattered papers and printouts covering the table. Henderson's employment records, school district maps, and Ava's drawings, each page a fragment of a puzzle too disturbing to fully comprehend. Ava sits cross-legged on a chair, pencil moving across her sketchbook with surgical precision, while James paces, wearing a path in the linoleum that matches the circles we've been talking in for the past hour. "We need more than behavior patterns to get the police involved," James says, running a hand through hair that seems to have grayed overnight. "They'll want evidence, Real evidence. Henderson tried to isolate and abduct your daughter, I remind him, voice sharper than intended. That's not enough? It's her word against his, and he'll say he was just offering academic guidance. James stops pacing, braces his hands on the counter. You know how these things go, Ray, how they get buried. He's right, and the knowledge sits like acid in my stomach. 20 years wearing a badge taught me that the system protects itself first, victims second, if at all, especially when the accusations involve respected community figures. I have more, Ava says without looking up. Her voice is flat, almost mechanical, but I've learned to hear the urgency beneath its monotone surface. James and I turn to her simultaneously. She flips her sketchbook around, revealing page after page of intricate diagrams, human figures in various postures, annotated with timestamps, locations, and observations. Not just Henderson and Carlos now, but students. Dozens of them. These are from before, she explains, pointing to earlier pages, but these, she flips forward, are from yesterday, during the pep rally for the championship. The drawings show subtle gestures, hand positions, eye movements, a silent language hidden within normal teenage awkwardness. What am I looking at? I ask, leaning closer. Communication patterns, non-verbal cues between handlers and targets. She points to one figure, a student whose stance mirrors Henderson's in minute, precise ways. This is transmission of instructions. And here, her finger moves to another diagram. Confirmation of receipt. James looks lost, but something cold slides down my spine as I begin to see the patterns Ava has documented. Students across different groups, different grades, all exhibiting the same subtle behavioral tics when in proximity to Henderson or Carlos. How many? I ask, my mouth dry. 20 confirmed, possibly more. Her pencil taps against a school map where she's marked positions with small red dots. All scheduled to attend the championship game tomorrow night. I straighten, mind racing. The championship? Of course. Crowds, confusion, excitement. Perfect cover. For what exactly? James asks. Ava looks up, her eyes meeting mine for a brief, rare moment. Selection. Final assessment before transport. Transport where? She flips to a final page, showing a flyer for Camp Nova, Elite Athletic Development. The same name Henderson mentioned during practice sessions, casual references I'd dismissed as normal, sports talk. I found this in Carlos's desk when he was supervising detention. She doesn't explain how she accessed his desk, and I don't ask. 20 students are already marked for recruitment. Their parents received scholarship offers last week. James collapses into a chair, face ashen. Christ, Ray, this is bigger than we thought. We need to see the gym, I say, decision made. Now, before they clean up whatever evidence might be there. 30 minutes later, we're walking through the darkened halls of the school, our presence authorized by a reluctant janitor who remembers James from his police days. The gymnasium looms ahead, its double doors partially open, spilling a wedge of light into the hallway. Voices drift out. Henderson and Carlos running a late practice session with a handful of students. We hang back, watching through the narrow gap between doors. 6 teenagers run drills on the gleaming floor. Not star athletes, I note, but average kids, the kind who blend into backgrounds, who might not be missed immediately. Watch their positions, Ava whispers, her small form pressed against the wall beside me. The formation. It's not basketball, it's perimeter control. I see it now. The students aren't practicing a sport, but a coordinated movement pattern. 3 maintaining position while 3 others rotate through, mimicking a security escort formation. Henderson stands at center court, calling out what sound like ordinary coaching instructions but carry weight beyond their words. "Blue team, tighten up. Red team, rotate on my mark." His voice echoes in the cavernous space. Beside me, Ava's hand moves across her sketchbook, capturing the scene with disturbing accuracy. Conditioning for controlled movement, teaching them to monitor and contain others. Carlos circles the perimeter, making minute adjustments to students' postures, a hand here, a shoulder there. Each touch, brief, professional, yet carrying an undercurrent of something else. Authority, ownership. "They're not creating victims," I murmur, the realization dawning with sickening clarity. "They're creating handlers." Ava nods once, sharply. The championship is the extraction point. 20 new recruits, processed through Camp Nova, returned as future recruiters. Her voice remains flat, but her fingers tighten around her pencil until I fear it might snap. "The cycle perpetuates." James draws back, pulling us away from the door. "We need to go to the police. Now." The station's fluorescent lights cast everyone in a sallow, unhealthy glow. Detective Mercer, an old colleague from my days on the force, looks skeptical as we spread Ava's drawings across the conference table. "Movement patterns? Nonverbal cues?" He shakes his head. "Ray, I respect you, but this is thin." 20 kids are being targeted for trafficking tomorrow, I say, keeping my voice steady despite the urgency coiling in my chest. Henderson and Carlos aren't acting alone. This is organized. Mercer's eyes flick to Ava, who stands silently beside her father, face impassive. "And all this comes from observations by a 12-year-old? Before I can respond, Ava steps forward, flipping open her sketchbook to a new page I haven't seen. It shows the gymnasium layout, with each person's position marked precisely. Lines trace movement patterns, intersections, handoffs, transforming the chaos of a practice session into something clinical, methodical, predatory. "These are not subjective interpretations," she says, her voice carrying in the quiet room. "These are documented behavioral patterns consistent with systemic conditioning and nonverbal command structures." She pulls out more pages, dates, times, locations, a catalog of surveillance so thorough it would put most police operations to shame. "The championship game provides cover for assessment and extraction of preconditioned subjects." She points to a section of her notes. "Carlos makes phone calls at precisely 22-minute intervals during practices, always from the supply closet, always to the same number." This catches Mercer's attention. "You have the number?" Ava nods and recites it from memory. Mercer jots it down, then picks up his phone. "Franklin, run this through the system." He turns back to us, expression still skeptical, but with a new edge of concern. "Even if there's something here, we'd need more to act on." I lean forward. "The game is tomorrow night. 20 kids who match the same behavioral profiles as Henderson and Carlos, all scheduled for special training at Camp Nova next week." Mercer's phone buzzes. He answers, listens, and his expression shifts from skepticism to something harder, colder. "That number," he says after hanging up, "it's connected to 3 open missing persons cases. Teenagers, all last seen at sporting events in neighboring counties." The room falls silent as the implications sink in. Mercer studies Ava's drawings with new intensity, no longer seeing a child's observations, but potential evidence. "Tell me exactly what you've seen," he says to Ava. "Everything from the beginning." As Ava begins to speak, her voice steady and precise, I feel a terrible weight settling in my chest. We've scratched the surface of something vast and predatory, something that's been operating in plain sight for years. And tomorrow night, It plans to take 20 more children. The championship game isn't just a cover, it's a harvest. The stadium lights burn against the twilight sky, turning the football field into an island of harsh white against deepening shadows. I adjust the flesh-colored earpiece nestled in my right ear, the soft murmur of police chatter, a constant reminder that tonight isn't about touchdowns or school pride. Somewhere in this crowd of face-painted teenagers and proud parents, 20 kids are being prepped for a journey they don't understand by people who've been broken into becoming breakers themselves. Mercer stands beside me near the concession stand, dressed in casual clothes that don't quite hide the cop in him. "We've got 12 officers scattered throughout the stands," he says, voice low. "4 more in the parking lot watching the buses. FBI has a team on standby 2 miles out." "That was fast," I observe. "When you say child trafficking and have 3 missing persons cases potentially connected, bureaucracy finds a way to move." He scans the filling stadium. "We're looking at a controlled operation. Identify, confirm, then move simultaneously. No sirens, no panic." I nod, grateful for his efficiency and discretion. Ava's already in position with James. Upper stands, Section C. "You sure she can do this?" Mercer's doubt isn't unfounded. The entire operation hinges on a 12-year-old's ability to identify subtle behavioral cues in a crowded, chaotic environment. "She sees patterns we don't," I say simply. "Trust her." I make my way up the metal bleachers, navigating through clusters of excited spectators. The energy is electric. Hometown championship, decades-old rivalry, teenage glory on the line. The perfect cover for something much darker. James and Ava sit at the end of a row, slightly separated from other spectators. Ava's wearing noise-canceling headphones to manage the sensory overload, her eyes constantly moving across the field, and stands with methodical precision. Her sketchbook is open on her lap, but instead of drawing, she's referencing a detailed stadium map she's created, marked with numbered positions and sightlines. "She's been mapping the entire place," James says as I sit beside them. "Every exit, every blind spot, every security camera." Ava removes one earphone. "I've identified 7 handlers already," she says without preamble. "Carlos is by the south entrance. Henderson is with the coaching staff. 5 others are positioned at strategic exit points." I relay this to Mercer through my earpiece, watching as he subtly directs his officers to verify. "What about the targets?" I ask. "Still assembling. They'll be brought in under cover of halftime." She points to her map. "The buses are already in position. 3 of them, not the usual 2. The 3rd is unmarked, parked behind the maintenance shed." The stadium lights suddenly dim, then flash as the home team bursts onto the field to thunderous applause. The sensory assault makes Ava flinch, her hands tightening around her sketchbook, but her eyes never stop their systematic scan of the crowd. "Confirmed on Carlos," Mercer's voice crackles in my ear. He's definitely coordinating something. 4 subjects just approached him, received what looked like wristbands. "Identification markers," Ava murmurs, though she couldn't possibly have heard Mercer. "They'll use colored wristbands to designate handlers and targets. Common practice for group outings to avoid drawing attention." The game begins, a swirl of motion and noise that seems increasingly distant from our silent observation. James keeps one hand near Ava's shoulder, not quite touching, ready to ground her if the sensory input becomes too much. "There," Ava says suddenly, pointing toward a cluster of students in the lower stands. "The girl in the gray hoodie. Watch how she keeps checking her phone, then scanning Section B. She's confirming arrivals." I relay this to Mercer, watching as one of his plainclothes officers casually makes their way toward the indicated area. For the next 30 minutes, the pattern repeats. Ava identifies subtle behavioral cues. A boy whose posture shifts when Carlos walks past, two girls who seem to be corralling younger students toward a specific exit, a parent chaperone whose attentive smile never reaches his eyes. Each observation is passed along, verified, added to the growing operational map. "It's bigger than we thought," I murmur to James. "This isn't just Henderson and Carlos. There's a whole network." "How long has this been happening?" James asks, his face tight with controlled anger. "Right under everyone's noses?" Ava answers without looking up from her map. "Based on behavioral entrenchment and hierarchical signaling patterns, approximately 4 years at this school. Likely longer elsewhere." The halftime buzzer sounds, sending players jogging toward locker rooms and spectators toward concession stands. The crowd's movement creates new patterns, new opportunities for observation and for action. "They're moving," Ava says, suddenly tense. "Carlos is directing the first group toward the east exit. 6 targets, 2 handlers." Mercer's voice is tight in my ear. "We see them. Moving intercept teams into position." I watch as 2 plainclothes officers casually converge on the exit, positioning themselves to block without being obvious. The first arrests need to happen quietly, away from the main crowd, to avoid triggering the other handlers. "Henderson is watching from the sidelines," Ava continues. "He just signaled to someone near the locker rooms. Adult male, blue jacket, baseball cap." "Got him," Mercer confirms. That's the bus driver for the unmarked vehicle. The first arrest happens so smoothly that most spectators don't even notice. Carlos, reaching for something in his pocket, suddenly finds himself flanked by 2 officers. A brief conversation, a flash of badges hidden from the crowd, and he's being escorted away. No handcuffs yet, nothing to draw attention. Just a man leaving with 2 friends, his face a mask of careful blankness. "Henderson's noticed," Ava says, tracking the coach's movements. "Micro-expressions indicate alarm. He's reaching for his phone." "Intercept now," I hear Mercer order through my earpiece. "All teams move." The carefully orchestrated operation accelerates. Officers throughout the stadium begin moving toward identified handlers and targets. Still subtle, still controlled, but with increased urgency. Henderson abandons his position, moving quickly toward the locker rooms. His stride is purposeful but measured, nothing that would attract attention in the busy halftime crowd. "He's heading for the buses," Ava says, attempting to salvage the primary extraction. I start to rise, intending to follow, but James catches my arm. "Let the police handle it," he says, voice tight. "That's what they're here for." He's right, but the investigator in me chafes at staying put. Through my earpiece I hear Mercer coordinating the final phase of the operation. "All units, primary suspect is moving toward the parking lot. Bus team, prepare to intercept. Subject is likely to resist." The minutes stretch like hours as we wait for confirmation. Ava continues tracking movements throughout the stadium, identifying additional handlers who are now being quietly contained. The halftime show begins, the marching band taking the field in a flash of brass and percussion, providing cover for the operation continuing in the periphery. "They've stopped the buses," Mercer's voice finally confirms. "Henderson is in custody. No resistance. Repeat, no resistance." Relief floods through me, but Ava shakes her head. "Ask about his physical response, his bodily reaction to arrest." I relay the question, drawing a puzzled pause from Mercer before he responds. "Weird thing. When they put the cuffs on him, he just exhaled, like he was relieved. Officer says he practically offered his wrists." Ava nods once, sharply. Confirmation of forced handler status. His body recognized the arrest as release, not capture. James looks confused. What does that mean? It means Henderson was a victim first, I explain, the pieces finally clicking into place. Conditioned, broken, then repurposed. The system perpetuates itself by turning victims into recruiters. Victims who create victims, Ava murmurs, closing her sketchbook as the band plays on, oblivious to the operation dismantling a predatory network around them. The perfect closed system. As the second half begins, we make our way down from the stands. The game continues, passes, tackles, cheers, while around the edges, something dark and long established is being carefully pulled apart. Parents will be called tonight. Questions will be asked. Investigations will spread to other schools, other districts. In the parking lot, I watch as Henderson is transferred to a police vehicle, his face visible in the brief moment between cars. No anger, no defiance, just a vacant relief that speaks volumes about what might have happened during those 2 missing years. "Is it over?" James asks as we walk toward his car, Ava between us, her small shoulders finally relaxing as we leave the noise and chaos behind. "This part," I answer, knowing there's more truth than comfort in my words. But whatever system created Henderson, whatever turned him from victim to perpetrator, that's still out there. Ava looks up at the night sky, her face illuminated by the stadium lights in the distance. "They'll adapt," she says softly. "Systems always do." She's right, of course. Tonight we've cut off tentacles, but the body remains hidden, waiting to grow new ones. As we drive away from the stadium, leaving the flashing lights of police vehicles behind, I can't shake the image of Henderson's face, the relief of a prisoner finally freed from his cell, only to find himself in a different kind of confinement. Some chains, it seems, are harder to see than others. Ava's bedroom is darker than I remember. The blinds drawn against the afternoon sun, creating a cave-like quality that makes me squint as I enter. It's been a month since the arrests, a month of statements, evidence reviews, and expanding investigations that have uncovered trafficking networks in 3 neighboring states. A month of watching a 12-year-old girl who saw too much retreat further into herself, like a turtle pulling limbs into its shell for protection. She sits cross-legged on her bed, wearing dark glasses despite the room's dimness. Her sketchbook is open before her, but the drawings have changed, more frenetic, darker, the clean lines of her earlier observations replaced by something more chaotic. A pair of headphones covers her ears, not the noise-canceling ones she wore at the game, but larger, bulkier ones that seem to swallow her small head. "Ava?" I keep my voice low, gentle. "It's Ray." She doesn't look up, but her pencil pauses. One hand reaches up to slide the headphones down around her neck. "I know. Your gait pattern is distinctive. Right heel strike, 0.4-second delay before weight transfer, compensating for old knee injury." Same Ava, noticing everything. But something's different. Her voice flatter, more mechanical than before, as if she's retreated further into the clinical safety of pure observation. "Your dad called me," I say, moving carefully to sit in the desk chair across from her. "Said you wanted to talk." "Not wanted. Needed." She still doesn't look up, her face angled toward her sketchbook. The dark glasses hide her eyes completely, giving her the appearance of a tiny, solemn oracle. "The new school psychologist moves like a handler." A chill runs through me despite the stuffy warmth of the room. "We've been here before," Ava noticing patterns others miss, patterns that turned out to be horrifyingly real. But there's something different in her delivery now, something that makes me hesitate. "They've all been in custody for a month," I remind her gently. "Henderson, Carlos, the others. The network is bigger than we thought." Her pencil moves again, sharp strokes creating angles and lines I can't interpret from my position. The investigation confirmed that. She's right about that. What started as an operation to stop a local recruitment event has expanded into a multi-agency investigation. Dozens of arrests across several states, children recovered from training facilities that operated under the guise of elite sports camps, a system so vast and well established that it seemed impossible it could have remained hidden for so long. The school brought in a new psychologist, I say carefully, to help students process what happened. Dr. Winters. Ava's pencil moves more quickly now. Credentials verified by the district, references checked, history seemingly perfect. But her wrists. Ava finally looks up, her face expressionless behind the dark lenses. When she writes notes, her left hand maintains a specific distance from the edge of the desk, consistent with conditioning from restraints. When the fire alarm tested yesterday, her neck muscles tensed in the same pattern Henderson displayed. Precise alignment of compensatory movements. James appears in the doorway, his face lined with worry. He gives me a look that speaks volumes: concern, fear, uncertainty. She won't go back to her sessions, he says. Says it's not safe. It's not, Ava states firmly. Dr. Winters was conditioned by the same system. Her verbal patterns include embedded command structures, subtle redirections. She's assessing, not treating. I glance at James, then back to Ava. Have you been documenting this? She nods once, sharply, and flips back several pages in her sketchbook. The drawings are different from her earlier work, still precise, but with a frantic energy to the lines, as if drawn by someone whose perception is operating at an uncomfortable speed. These are her standard posture baselines, Ava explains, pointing to a series of sketches showing a woman in various seated and standing positions. Note the weight distribution, always favoring the right side. Classic compensation for left-sided trauma. I study the drawings, trying to see what Ava sees. There are patterns there, certainly, specific ways of holding the body, positions that seem deliberately maintained. But are they evidence of trauma conditioning, or simply the idiosyncrasies any body develops over time? And here, Ava flips to another page, this one covered in what look like transcribed fragments of conversation, annotated with observations. Command phrases embedded in therapeutic language. Notice how you feel when followed by specific sensory cues. Remember the safety of, paired with location anchoring. Building associative pathways. James steps fully into the room, hands shoved in his pockets like he doesn't trust what they might do otherwise. Ray, is this... Could she be right? Again? I look at Ava, at the dark glasses hiding her eyes, at the tension visible in the tendons of her neck. She's been through trauma, not just witnessing the trafficking operation, but the aftermath. Endless interviews with police and FBI agents, explaining her observations over and over to skeptical adults. The pressure of knowing her evidence helped build a case that's still expanding. The glasses, I say softly. Why are you wearing them inside, Ava? She stiffens slightly. Photosensitivity. Since when? A pause, longer than her usual quick responses. Since the arrests. The exposure to multiple trauma patterns created a sensory processing overload. My brain is absorbing too much. James makes a small, pained sound. The doctors call it a stress response, he explains. Too much input, too many patterns. She's hypersensitive to everything now. I lean forward, trying to see past the barrier of dark lenses to the eyes beneath. Ava, is it possible that what you're seeing with Dr. Winters is affected by what you've been through? Her face remains expressionless, but her fingers tighten around her pencil. You think I'm contaminating my observations with trauma response? I think anyone would be affected by what you've seen and done, I say carefully, even someone with your remarkable abilities. I've considered that variable. She turns a page in her sketchbook, revealing a diagram I don't immediately understand. Lines connecting observations to possible interpretations, probabilities noted. Beside each, I've applied 3 different statistical models to filter for cognitive bias. The patterns remain statistically significant. James runs a hand over his face. Ray, I don't know what to do. The school insists she continue the sessions. They say it's helping the other kids. Or identifying new targets, Ava interjects. The system adapts, evolves. We cut off one approach, they implement another. I stand, moving to the window to draw back the curtain slightly. Outside, autumn is turning to winter, the trees bare against a gray sky. Light spills across the room, making Ava flinch behind her glasses. I'll look into Dr. Winters, I say finally. Discreetly. Check her background more thoroughly than the school did. There won't be gaps like with Henderson, Ava warns. They've learned, adapted their approach. The history will look perfect now. She might be right. The investigation has revealed a network more sophisticated than we initially imagined, one with connections in education, medicine, social services, one that learns from its mistakes. What do you need from me, Ava? I ask directly. Beyond investigating Dr. Winters? She removes her glasses finally, revealing eyes ringed with exhaustion, pupils contracted against even the modest light from the window. Believe me, she says simply, even when it seems improbable, even when it would be easier not to. James places a hand on my shoulder, his expression torn between a father's worry and a former cop's instinct. What do you think, Ray? Really? I look at Ava, this strange, brilliant child whose perception has been both gift and curse, who saw what adults missed, who helped stop a trafficking operation that had operated undetected for years, who now sits in a darkened room, overwhelmed by the trauma she absorbed through her remarkable ability to see patterns. I think, I say carefully, that Ava's been right when it mattered most, and that's reason enough to take this seriously. Relief flickers across her face, quickly replaced by her usual neutral expression. She puts her glasses back on, retreating behind their shield. The darkness helps, she says, answering my unasked question, reduces the input, makes the patterns clearer. Later, standing by the window in my own apartment, I watch night settle over the city and think about patterns. Those we see, those we miss, those we create in our minds to make sense of chaos. About systems that adapt and evolve, about predators who learn from their mistakes, about a 12-year-old girl who sees too much, whose gift has become a burden she carries behind dark glasses. My phone buzzes. James, with a text. She says the new school psychologist moves like a handler. I stare at the words, feeling doubt and certainty war within me. Is Ava seeing something real? Or is her traumatized mind creating patterns where none exist? The trafficking network we uncovered was vast, sophisticated, deeply embedded in trusted institutions. Who's to say it couldn't have already adapted, already placed new handlers in positions to continue its work? Who's to say, except a child who sees what others miss, whose body now absorbs the trauma she witnesses until she needs darkness to function? I press my palm against the cool glass of the window, feeling the winter chills seep through. Outside, shadows lengthen across the street, and I find myself scanning the darkness for patterns I might be missing, for threats hiding in plain sight, waiting for my attention to waver. This is not the end, I realize. Just a pause in a pattern that continues to unfold, visible only to those who know how to see it, to those willing to look into the darkness and recognize what looks back.